Hi guys, welcome to Nyasha Z Presents, where I, Nyasha, present to you young Zimbabweans in professional and academic spaces. And today, specifically, I will be presenting Brian Marombedza, who is a Berkeley graduate, a financial services professional. He says he is just a boy from Nyanga, but I promise the world will be hearing more from him in the future. And overall, in this interview, I'm just grateful for the professionalism and everything that he brought to the table about his journey. And I hope your biggest takeaway from this is, you don't have to be stopped by life circumstances. Life is tough, but it's worth living, and there's so much we can discover. Hope you have fun, because we certainly did. Hi, Brian. Welcome to the Next Gen web series. Thank you for gracing us here with your presence.
Thank you so much, Nyasha. It's a great honor to be here. I've always dreamed of being on this show, but I guess what they say, dreams do come true indeed.
Okay, Brian. Okay, stop. Thank you for flattering me. But first of all, tell us how you're doing, where you are, and how things are going for you.
I'm doing well. I'm just arriving from my third favorite city. I'm home, and home is, it depends with where you ask. But right now, home to me means Harare, Zimbabwe. That's where I am. It's a great summer. I'm working on something else that has taken me away from work for a while, from New York, and so I decided to come back home to work on some private stuff that I'm working on. But I'm also having another exciting journey that I'm having. I'm doing a master's program in global affairs with Tsinghua University, which is one of the best universities in Beijing, where President Xi went to. So I'm quite excited about that, being a master's student over Zoom. And so that's my life for now. That's what I'm working on.
First of all, congratulations on that. I think it's the Schwarzman Scholarship, which actually, I remember it was like, those very smart kids at our school as well that I know got to be recipients. So how did you decide to apply for that? I know you studied political economy. So what was the inspiration behind that?
Well, to those who have been my friends for a long time, they know that I grapple with two things. I always try to ask myself what the highest calling of mankind is. Sometimes I think it's finance, sometimes I think it's politics. Of course, I have sort of settled on a middle ground, which is that I think in my case, I'm going to pursue finance in my sort of mid-ages until I get to a stage where I think I can, have made enough observations in the political arena for me to, do something in my country or help somewhere to shape public policy. But for now, I'm much interested in finance as the highest calling of mankind. Of course, in preparing for any public office that might come in future, I've been very interested in trying to figure out who is going to be in power in the world when that time comes. In 20 years, it could well be that Washington might not be the most important capital in the world. Those are just my own personal observations. Right. It could be that Beijing would be very important. And I figured that, it's something that is exciting. You get to meet a lot of people, you make connections, and you get to learn about this great program. So in my case, it was just me reading a book, in this case being Steve Schwarzman's book that I read. And at the end of it, he was talking about his program and saying, this is a great program. I decided to look it up. It felt like a great program to do, and it felt like a great adventure. And so I applied just blindly. And that's how I got to this program.
Right. So I'm just thinking from, the things that I know about you and what you were talking about, caring about people being something important to you. I'm curious how this time in which we have to be separated from other people has worked out for you. As someone who's very maybe social or who loves to be around people and actually contribute, how have you navigated this whole thing, and how do you plan to navigate being a master's student online?
Well, it's been a crazy time. Professionally, it's been very confusing. I started working at DB at Deutsche Bank over the summer of 2019, and it was very confusing being someone who is starting in banking and not having the close mentorship that you need. Of course, eventually I moved to New York and we went back into the office, and that was a little bit better. But then right now, as you're saying again, starting, doing something online, of course, there's the Zoom fatigue on top of many other things that might happen. In class, there's just a better flow of information. You can raise your hand and you can talk, you can look around and see whether the professor wants you to continue to talk or not, but those things that might be difficult to do online. And then coming sort of like, to the personal side, of course, it's been very hard. The world used to be very much better when we could choose where to live freely and, and when to travel and where to travel. We're very happy, at least back home here, that they have lifted the restrictions for intercity travel. So at least you can see relatives around. But it's been a difficult time. But what I've tried to do is that I've tried to find passions that can sort of carry me through this period, be it my YouTube channel that, I've taken a break on, but I'm coming back to shortly.
We can't wait.
Just reading a bunch of books and, trying to, see whether you can, virtually interact with people. But it's been hard. It's been hard. Personally, it's been, I've gotten some dark moments during this period where, over time, I figured it's very difficult to maintain relationships over, the internet when you cannot predict what are you going to do in future and, where does your future lead you because of these restrictions, So it's been an interesting period, a period of learning, but also a period of pain, depending on which side you're looking at.
Right. I want to go back to what you mentioned about the highest calling of mankind. I really liked that phrasing. What do you think Brian, who was at Marist Brothers, considered to be the highest calling of mankind?
Oh, it's interesting. It's interesting. He considered the highest calling of mankind probably to be the church. This guy you're interviewing, if everything had stood out according to what he thought, he would probably be in a monastery somewhere. In fact, maybe I was just getting this whole leadership thing in my head. But at some point, I thought, you know what? I should just devote my life to the church. I should get as many theology degrees as I can. And who knows, maybe one day I could end up being in the Vatican as a cardinal. But it turns out, I realized there could be other ways for me to help people. Not that, I do not consider that, part of life, supreme or important. It's just that I figured that I could better serve humanity in other ways and also pursue multiple passions, which probably the church might not have allowed me to keep pursuing. So that's what the older Brian would tell you.
Right. So I'm thinking maybe some of these ideas of realizing that you could change the world in a different way started maybe in 2014, because I don't know if you remember writing an article as like the Minister of Social, what you would do as the Minister of Social Enterprise. Do you remember writing something about that?
I do remember writing something along those lines. It's interesting. Right around 2014, as you're saying, it's upper six. A lot of things were changing. I got into the UC program, and I started getting exposed to many people who had originally who had thought not the way I used to think. There's another article that I wrote just for reference of articles, which is called "To the Student at a Boarding High School," at a high school boarding, where I talk about the fact that, my life had essentially revolved around a 10-kilometer radius ever since I was born. I was born in Nyanga at Mount Mellery Mission Hospital. That's also where I then went to Nyanga primary school at Mount Mellery Primary School, which was at the same place as where the hospital was. And then I went to high school to Marist Nyanga, which is about 2 to 3 kilometers away from Mount Mellery Primary School, where I was born and where I did my primary school. So that had been sort of my comfort zone. But then when I got out to USAP, I started meeting all these people, people from all over the country who I met, who taught me an incredible amount of stuff. I then also got exposed, more literature. I would go to the US Embassy, which used to be on the public affairs section in Eastgate, then go to their libraries and get all these books that started opening me up to many of these different passions. And, I think that's the period you're referring to. And I was just trying to reform my brain and figure out which path I would take in life.
Right. I think, I can also agree that USAP was very life-changing, but you also went to like one of the finest schools in the land or, in the world. So what do you think you discovered about yourself as well at Berkeley, and how in general it's just shaped who you are today?
Weirdly enough, one of the most important lessons I discovered was that the world we live in is getting increasingly separated, and people are beginning to live in bubbles, and we have to find a way for us to reach across the aisle and for us to talk to people who might not necessarily agree with us. What I mean is this way. When I got to Berkeley, which was in May of 2016, when I arrived in Berkeley, as you know, Berkeley is a very liberal school. Not that I have anything against, the inclinations and the thoughts of the people who went at my amazing school. But it was interesting because I was an international student. I didn't really know a lot about the US, especially about US politics. As you will recall as well, during that time, that's when, the election was heating up, Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. And at that point, because I was in my Berkeley echo chamber, it felt to me that there was just no way Mr. Trump was going to win this election. It felt that the election was clearly gone. Everyone I talked to on campus tried to solicit their views. They all told me there is no way this is going to be a whitewash. Of course, with the benefit of hindsight, we all know what happened. And, we can figure... It's only at that point, after the election was called for President Trump, that's when I realized that, this world we're living in, you can get in a point where you stay in your bubble and you follow the same social media channels, you follow the same celebrities, and they all tell you and reinforce the same stuff. But that doesn't mean that that's what everyone else in the world believes or accepts. And that was one of the most important lessons that I think I learned at Berkeley. And it's only after then, that's when I started trying to figure out, what does the other side of America think? What does the other side of the world think? The people who might not necessarily believe in me. And this extended to, taking classes like the Abrahamic religions, where I studied Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and figured out that there wasn't really a lot that we disagreed on in these three religions. In fact, all of them, they go to assemble on Abraham, who is the father of Isaac. It's just what happens after Abraham that determines whether you're Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. And it was very fascinating to take such classes at Berkeley and realize that the world is stronger when we discover each other's, diversity and try to embrace it and accept that there is no one solid truth that should rule the world.
That's it touches to a very important point that I've been thinking about, which is about change, that I think we are raised to, want to stick to this rigid thing and be afraid of change. We're afraid to lose ourselves or lose our core values, whatever. And so I really love what you're talking about. And I think, even you doing your master's at Tsinghua University, something that people will be like, wait, stay in America or keep doing things in America. And it's like, no, there is so much more that you can learn from just studying outside the US. And I studied abroad and I know how beneficial that was. But I want to touch on something before I forget, something controversial to Black men that you said. I think every Black man might feel some type of way about something that you wrote, which is that you are the only Black man who dreams in color. Do you remember writing that? Explain yourself so that they forgive you.
No, you see, when you said you were going to take a background check on me, I didn't. Did you hire a detective? Some of those things are clearly hidden in some internet forums where I never think people would get to. I love
Pinterest, so that's the first place I check.
It's interesting because I got that saying. I modified it a little bit. There are days during my gap year, I used to listen very much to Star FM, which is this popular radio station in Zimbabwe. And there was a guy there, I think he was a sportscaster. He called himself Skywalker. And he used to say that he was the only Black man who dreamt in pink or something like that, which was weird. But then I figured, not that I don't think other Black men don't dream in color, but I just figured that, changing that statement and putting a color to it. I think the difference is that we all dream, we all have visions, but the way in which we take these visions and the way we consider whether we can do it or not is what sets us apart from other men or women of our same race, of our same nationality. And for me, I've always taken my dreams as something that I definitely can achieve. I've never shied away from trying to attack anything. I was just a young boy who was growing up in Nyanga. And, I saw the challenge of trying to apply to one of the top high schools in the country, even though, despite the fact that we were very close in terms of geography. And then, at some point in my life, in Form 4, one of the guys who was, just ahead of me and actually a role model and a friend of mine to this day, Terence Mrazigwa, wrote many subjects. It seemed around with the informal survey I took in my stream in Form 3 at Nyanga High School. Nobody wanted to do that. But I was just like, what the heck? I'll do it. I'll write many subjects. In fact, one of the teachers in the staff room said, this guy is going to spoil the reputation of the school when he comes out with 18 C's. Well, I tried to do a little bit better than that, and I came out well. In A-level, I was just like, you know what, I'm going to apply for USOP. At some point, I decided, I need to stop applying for these small schools that are not going to give me full scholarships. I need to apply to Berkeley. I don't care what people say that it's the best school. I'll just apply. I'll tell my story. And then this is just what I have done. Dreams have come along, and they've been very, very bright, and they've been in color, and I've tried to impress them and go ahead with my journey. So if there are other Black men who dream in color, I really hope they won't be offended. But in my case, when I asked around, it seemed like everyone else wasn't taking their dreams seriously. So I thought maybe it could be possible I was the only one who was dreaming in color.
I love that. And I think it also sounds like something that we were talking about before, which is almost, people thinking linearly or just thinking, oh, let me stick to this. And then you are, into discovering other things. I think that's also what the color could also mean. Like, just speaking of dreaming big, I think one other thing you said, you did Zim Career Connect. And one of the things I think you said was, one of the things that you liked is that you were able to help students to break out of their insecurities and dream big, which is something that I'm really able to relate to because I have cousins, whatever's that, I try to explain to this process and there's just something holding people back. So what do you think it is that holds people back from dreaming big, especially in Zimbabwe, or from even, reaching out to opportunities like the ones that, you've gotten in your life?
I think what holds people back the most is that we do not have the stories. The stories have to be told, and which is where it comes to and I applaud the work that you're doing because you're putting the stories out there. It will become very difficult for a young girl sitting in in Nyanga for her to dream to be, a senator if one of the senators never come to Nyanga and tell them, you know what, you can actually do it. It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast for one of my classes, Chimamada's podcast, TED Talk actually, which is called The Danger of a Single Story. And she was saying that in her early days when she was writing in Nigeria, she was writing about people who ate apples and, were happy when the sun came out and stuff like that. But this was not true because she said there were no apples in Nigeria or something like that, and that they never celebrated when the sun came out because the sun was always bright. But her life took a really good turn when she discovered African writers who then were writing stories about African people. And then that's when she said, no, this is my genre. This is what I want to write. I want to write about my people. And so I think what we lack, which is what I have seen, in my travels and what I've seen in the US, is that what we lack is that our people do not write the stories. They don't write the stories. I mean, like you look at, for example, in the US, President Barack Obama, when he was done with his term of office, he released this book, which was, a bestseller, and so many people translated into so many languages. Of course, for example, President Mugabe did not have a long time after his term of office for him to write a book, but it would have been very helpful if he had taken the time after his retirement to sit down and write a book and tell us the story from his own side. Biographers can do a lot, but it is very important when people write our own stories because, rural boys in Zimba herding cattle would then be inspired by such stories because that's what he did when he was young. But because we don't have a text from him, we'll always read other works written by other people. And so that's what I think we should do. We should tell the stories and we should write the stories so that other people, when they see us, they don't just think that we woke up and we're here. They will identify that they can grow in the most remote parts of the country, and through sheer hard work, a little bit of luck, and and everything else will happen along the way, and they can make it into anything they want in life.
And I think one of the important things, right, is the examples, like people showing you how they have navigated certain things and reached what they've reached. You have, your YouTube channel, your platform, which you do highlight some of those people that you call, African lions and lionesses. So, I want to give you an example that most people will know, Strive Masiyiwa. And I think he's someone that all of us can appreciate and, revere for the work he's done. But, for me, he, like we were saying, he hasn't written an autobiography. And I think for me as a woman, as a, young lady of a different generation, it can be almost hard to connect with his story. So what do you think for you is something that you can relate to from him, or something that you see in him and you say, this is worth emulating, and this is something that, you know, I really look up to because he does or because he represents?
Well, in my case, I think one of the most important lessons that I think I might have learned from Strive is that it's very important to get people who can help you when you get to a certain stage in life. You know, of course, Strive has not written a book, and I'll just add on to say that, but he does have a very active Facebook page, which apparently, according to him, I haven't verified this, but according to him, it is one of the most active, engaged Facebook pages in the world, apparently. But he has a very active Facebook page where he posts stuff. But in any case, coming back to him, I think one of the things, as I was saying, is that at a certain point, you will discover that your abilities are limited somehow. He talks about this story where in the early days of Econet, he had, you know, started, he was this hotshot engineer. He had already had his electrical engineering company and it was successful. And he had already started Econet, it was successful. But what he needed, like most entrepreneurs at that point, was an infusion of capital. He realized that he didn't have the banking skills. So according to him, he went and he took another guy who I think was in the UK or in the US, who was a Zimbabwean. And he said, you know what, come here, help me get as much capital as I need to grow this business. And for that, I think he gave him like 5% or something of the business. And so I think that's one of the most important things that we fail to do, at least as I've been observing, you know, my people, that we do not realize that our abilities are limited at a certain point. I'm very good on camera, but I'm really terrible at editing. Like, it takes me so much time to edit my videos. If it was possible that I would find someone to just edit my videos and I talked, it would be great. But then, of course, I do not have the money to pay someone. So I have to like go through the whole process and like process my videos, wait for them, buy, you know, I recently bought some expensive software that I'm experimenting on before I come back. You know, online. I used to use iMovie, but there's the other expensive software for Apple. I've even forgotten the name. I don't know. Yes, Final Cut Pro. I don't know what software you use, but you know, I started experimenting with a couple of videos, watching Final Cut Pro on YouTube, and people talking about Final Cut Pro, and I was like, oh, this seems like it would make my work easy. So now I'm experimenting with it before I can come back with more videos. But then, of course, for that you'd have to invest. And he says, you know, you need to be able to figure out people who can help you. Of course, that is if you have the money. But then some of the stuff that we can get help from people, they might not necessarily need money. People might just be excited to help you through your journey. And I think that's sort of something that I can emulate from him. Him figuring out that he's an engineer, he can build a big telecoms company, but he needs to assemble a great team for him to be able to run that company.
No, that sentiment definitely resonates, because I mean, I also have these big, wild dreams. And I think the hardest part is finding people backing you up, you know, people who you can work with, because eventually if you want to expand, you will need those people. And I'm glad you did talk about your YouTube creating process, because this is something I was also curious about. When you are creating your videos, do you think you're using your logical brain more or your creative brain?
It depends. It depends with what type of content I'm making. Generally, I don't make any like funny content or something. There's most of my videos, about 80%, they're generally about like hardcore, you know, economic stuff, stock market,
Facts.
Motivation. What is it that Dangote has said, and what is it that we can emulate from him? And then there are some videos that I've tried to work with that, you know, they have not been widely successful, but they are very interesting when I watch them. There's a series that I do on data and statistics where I look at how economies have overtaken each other. And I have these like dynamic bar charts that run that show that, well, in 2004, the Nigerian economy was the third highest, but then it goes up, becomes the biggest economy in Africa, and South Africa goes down. At some point, I think in 1980, Zimbabwe was the 7th biggest economy in Africa or in Southern Africa. But then, of course, now we are not one of the big economies. And so it's very interesting when I look at this data. And for that, when you're trying to manipulate data for an audience and for them to be engaged, I probably use the creativity side. But for most of my videos, I'm trying to figure out how best I can bring value. Like, how best can I make a video on opening the stock, an account on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange or on the Malawi Stock Exchange that would be engaging to someone and really show them the value for them to start investing their money at an early age, and so that they can, you know, create an inheritance for the future, for future generations, and, you know, for their future family and stuff.
And also on your channel, I see you are pushing, for the investment in, Zimbabwean stocks. And that's something that you've also talked about on, like, let's say use of partners. Something that's I'm trying to reconcile in my mind is that, Zimbabwean stocks grow quite slowly and they require, a fair amount of optimism. And on the other side, the word on the street is that, the consensus is traders are impatient and they want instant gratification. So I want to know which Brian is being real, the one who is patient with the Zimbabwean stocks or the one who is an impatient trader, because both cannot exist. So explain this to me.
Of course, both cannot exist. And it is actually a paradox because generally, I'm a very, very impatient person when it comes to projects, that is. Like if I start a project, I want it to be executed. Like I have my friend who I work with some agricultural projects that we do in Nyanga, I tell him, dude, we need to order 10 heifers. And he's like, okay, we're going to need 10 days for us to travel around and for us to see who is the best farmer. And I'm like,
and then you're like,
cut that.
Yeah.
As soon as I send you money, we need to execute on this transaction. And so it's interesting because I'm a very impatient person, but I'm not like that when it comes to financial investments. Because my reasoning, at least when it comes to African stocks, is that this is money that I'm putting away and will lock away for probably 10 to 20 or 30 years. The reason, of course, for Zimbabwe, it's clearly simple. It's very hard for you if you have money in Zimbabwe to take it out. So by already putting money in Zimbabwe, you have already made a decision that you either use the returns in Zimbabwe or you are just never going to use them for a long time. And for Zimbabwean stocks in particular, the way I observe the market is that this is a market that's growing. Zimbabwe is not going to be like this forever. There's one thing I always tell people. You cannot bet against a people, a whole nation and win. You can never bet against Zimbabwe. I don't care who you are. I don't care what predictions or data that you're using. I believe in this country. And I know that one day it will be back up, at least economically. That is what I'm focusing on. And in terms of the companies, we have created very resilient companies. I will give you, for example, Simbisa Brands, which runs the inns that most people in Zimbabwe eat almost and every date that they go to. The chicken inn, the pizza inn, the creamy inn. Most people do not know that that business is actually in other parts of the continent. Like, Simbisa has business operations in Kenya and I think also in Ghana as well. They have chicken in there. The people there, probably some of them who I talked to when I was in the US, they didn't know it was a Zimbabwean company. They just knew that there was chicken in. They just didn't know that it was a Zimbabwean headquartered company and that if you wanted to participate in the returns of that company, you had to buy shares of it on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. So most people do not realize this. And then I'll give another example, of course, my favorite, coming back to Strive, who happens to be a brilliant guy. I started buying shares in Strive's operations when it was just Econet. And then at some point, Econet was spun off into Cassava, which the biggest business in Cassava. It's actually about to be renamed to EcoCash Holdings. But the biggest business is EcoCash, which is itself another great business on its own. Econet used to be a $3 billion company. And at the time when it was spun off, Econet became a $3 billion company. Cassava became a $3 billion company. And as you can realize, I didn't need to buy new shares of Cassava. Because I was already a shareholder in Econet, I then got a piece of this other great business that had been spun out of Econet. And that happens with many of these businesses. And this is why I say I become patient with this story, because I figure out that over the long term, these businesses will grow, they will spin out better businesses. And, in 20 or 30 years, I don't know, I'll be sitting down and I'll be looking at whether dividends or will be selling my stocks and, going away to retire and enjoy my retirement somewhere in a great place, probably Chimani or something. I do like Nyanga, but I think I've seen better places in the country. And so, we'll figure it out when the time comes, but this is really a long-term play when it comes to stocks.
All right. So I think before we close up with some, rapid, short questions, I think I want to give you a chance to also talk about Mastercard, because I know that's something, that's been important to you. So, and I think in my mind, I can already tell that, you look up to someone like Strive Masiyiwa, who obviously he doesn't have to be doing all these businesses that he's doing in Zimbabwe. Like he's wealth and everything, and he could just live in any country. And I know Mastercard also has that similar sentiment of like, they are brilliant people like you and them coming back to do something in Zimbabwe and things like that. But yeah, I just want to hear your overall take on Mastercard and your experience and just how, it's been important in your life?
Of course, I am very grateful to the foundation and what they have done. I'm extremely proud of the work that the foundation has been doing over the African continent, whether it's helping scholars, whether it's helping mothers, farmers, and just recently the foundation gave a very big grant. I think it was $1.2 billion towards acquisition of vaccines for African countries. So the Mastercard Foundation has done an amazing job in what they have done, and they've been very focused in having this laser focus on African women and African youths and creating the future leaders. Of course, the dividends will pay off in the long term, and we'll see them, as some of us who were, recipients of these grants grow up and we are able to plow back to our communities. I would say about Mastercard, I think it's very interesting how their model comes around, because it's almost like USAP in terms of sort of the selection criteria. They look at academic excellence, they look at leadership, they look at economic disadvantage, and they look at ethos of giving back. And so these are things that are probably particularly important to me. And I think it's important, and I really, as I would just say in short, applaud the work that the foundation has done. I could have another session just talking about my appreciation for the foundation, but I'll leave it here. I'm very grateful.
Right. No, hopefully we have another opportunity. Like if I'm still doing this, hopefully you can come back and we'll have more to talk about. Because I think we've only started to barely scratch the surface. So I think now, these rapid questions, they give us an insight into hopefully who you are. I think one
thing. Should I be afraid?
Oh, no, not at all. Okay. What does, I think one of the things we haven't explored really is what does Brian do on the artistic side? Because I think you're a very logical person, diplomatic. Here you are on the camera. So on the artistic side, when no one is looking, when you are left, to create things by yourself, what artistic things are you into?
I'm not into a lot of artistic things. It's interestingly, I've been trying to do some photography. That's not coming out well. I actually wanted to do drone photography, but it turns out it's very hard for you to register a drone in Zimbabwe. And I had to go and see the Chief of Defense Intelligence at the Ministry of Defense to get my drone registered. But we're still working through that process, and hopefully I'll get my drone license soon in the country. But I've been experimenting with that, at least when I was still in the US. And so photography is really something that I have seen that is important, because you just take these photos, and when you look at them, you realize the stories, the smell, and the atmosphere that was there on that day that other people who weren't there, and other people can interpret these photographs differently. And so this is something that I've tried to be doing. But generally, I'm not artistic. I do listen to artists because I think they're great. I listen to music and I watch YouTube a lot, of course, because I'm a YouTuber.
Okay, which artists are on your most played on your playlist?
Oh, interesting. It depends with where I am. If I am in the US, where I usually take really long road trips, I've driven from Florida to Massachusetts in 2 days, just for context, before. And then on the third day, I flew to California from there. But no, actually, the first day I drove from Tennessee to Florida. And then the second day I drove from Florida to Virginia. And then the third day I drove from Virginia to Massachusetts. I was so tired as I was getting to Massachusetts that I started playing gospel music, under the reasoning that in case I died, I would get into heaven just playing gospel music. And then on the fifth day, that's when I flew from Boston to California. But anyway, I do play contemporary music. I've met a bunch of guys in the US who have introduced me to some music in other African countries. I've started listening to other East African artists, Diamond, Vanessa Mdee, who I hear she's no longer singing. I don't know whether it's because Rotimi married her and told her to stop. And then, of course, a little bit of West Africa. But coming back home, when I'm having these really long road trips, I prefer to listen to the guy who I think is one of the best guitarists of all time in history, Alec Macheso. He's my favorite musician. And, I really go long and hard with these 14-minute tracks. And, I just go in Sungura Macheso, Tongai Moyo, and and Nicolas Zakaria. And then, of course, I then start having these Zim Danzo guys who are so many, I can't mention them, and stuff like that. But yeah, that's my music selection.
Well,
it doesn't seem so modern, does it?
No, it is. You're hilarious. So, okay, all these people you've mentioned, you haven't mentioned anyone from Nyanga. So tell me, is there anything special about people from Nyanga?
Well, there is a lot of things special. I'm sure if you had done your research very well, you would have understood that one of my other favorite quotes is that a good wife comes from God and a good husband comes from Nyanga. The Nyanga people, the people who inhabit that district, they're very special people. They're very friendly. They're very loving. As you would understand, we host some of the best sites in the country. We have Mtara's Falls, which is it the deepest falls in the country? And, some of top there in terms of depth in Africa. We do have the Nyanga National Park and the Mount Nyangani, which is the highest peak. We have Trotbeck Hotel, which is a 4-star. 3-star. We have Montclair Hotel, which is a 4-star. We have Rose Hotel. You understand, even though we might hate him or like him, but Rose chose Matopos and Nyanga as the two places he would live when he colonized this country. There's something special about Nyanga. The weather is amazing. The people are amazing. We have great fun there. You should visit one day. You won't regret it.
Yeah, now we need to organize one of your long road trips and go to Nyanga. Okay. One other thing is, I think you went to primary school in Nyanga as well. So what were you most punished for doing at primary school?
I was scruffy. I was really scruffy. I was most punished for that. I did not wash my clothes at all. I did not iron my clothes at all. I was, sometimes I just would go to bed without showering. But then at some point along the way in primary school, I changed. But I was really scruffy. And then, of course, people also hated me because until the 6th grade, I was still sucking my right thumb. And so I was quite dumb. That's what society says, right? People who suck their thumbs, they're dumb. Though some people say they're intelligent, but I was sucking my right thumb until up to 6th grade, and so that was me in primary school. Not very pleasing at all, unfortunately.
Clearly, you were more on the intelligent side. But one of the last two questions. Complete this sentence for me, please. You need dash to stay on top of things in the financial services industry.
You need passion, and calendars. You need passion, you need calendars, you need emails.
Okay, the last question. We talked about, just documenting our lives and autobiographies and how they can be really important to people. So you've obviously lived a full life, which still has more moments to come. But just from what you've lived up to now, what would be the key moments in your memoir or autobiography?
Well,
maybe 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
Or maybe, okay, however many you want. It's the last
I've only been on this planet for 25 years, which I hope is a quarter of my life. I like to think I just want to live to 100 and then depart. I think the key moments, they come along the way. I think one of the key moments was actually when I got elected when I was in Form 3 and I got elected into the COC National Assembly. I was like an executive secretary there. It was an amazing time in COC. It made me travel a lot, actually, when I was in the National Committee. I traveled all the way to Mapisa Blawayo, Minda Girls High, which holds a special place in my heart. It was very hot when we got there. It was extremely hot, and yet we met some of the nicest people, and of course some of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. But they were feeding pigs. I was like, you know what? Let me take this and go and feed the pigs for you. Like, this is what they make ladies do here. It was very fascinating. I was in Form 3. And then another key moment, you shouldn't ask follow-up questions to this because we'll spend the whole day talking about it. But another key moment I would say was when I got into USAP. I mean, USAP opened an incredible amount of opportunities for me. I met incredible people. I made lifelong friends. I met mentors. I got to know about the American system, things that I never dreamt about. And then, of course, an interesting moment for me, actually, one of the most important moments in my life was when I was in the intern at the Mitara American Corner when I did my gap year, and I traveled to Chipinge, and I met there a bunch of students at Mount Selinda and a couple of other schools, I think Gaza and stuff. And these students, they were just very much excited to hear that someone was actually in the journey with them. Someone wanted to go to the US and they'd gotten accepted into a US university. And they said, We had never had this in our life. We didn't know about this, that, like you can go to the US, you can choose what major you want to do, and it doesn't really matter what you studied in high school. These things were so fascinating to them. And some of these guys have gone on to come to the US, and some of them are my close friends up to now. And then, of course, when I got to Berkeley, I think a key moment there was when I became president of the African Students Organization of African Students, OAS. That was an incredible year. I was just a freshman when I ran for this position, and I won, which was very shocking to me. But it turns out it was an interesting stage of dabbling with politics and student politics, and it probably signaled that I was good at that. So I consider it a highlight of my future. And then, of course, I will never forget the day when I did my interview for Deutsche Bank as an intern. This was a very interesting day because I was flying from California. I landed in New York, took out my phone, as you would imagine what you would do when you're landing. I received almost 100 messages, like immediately as I landed. People asking me, Brian, are you okay? Is your family fine? What's happening? Everything. Little did I know that within my 6-hour flight from California to New York, Robert Mugabe had been disposed of power, and he was no longer the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe. It was very fascinating, and it's interesting because it was just something that could have changed everything, And I had an interview the next day. I checked into a hotel in Manhattan. I was like, I'm going to forget about this. I'm going to switch off my phone, focus on my interview. I need this. I need to get into Wall Street, and I need my banking job. And, I woke up the next day. They said, we heard what happened in your country. Are you sure you're down for this? And I said, you know what? You do not understand. I've never been more ready than this. Take me into the interview. That was an amazing day, given how many things were happening in the world and what I was trying to navigate with. And of course, I got the offer to be an intern at DB. And so those are probably some of the highlights of my life up to now.
Very inspiring. And I'm surprised you're not mentioning this moment right here, since, it was a dream come true.
No, you usually mention it in the next interview. It'd be like, it was amazing, an incredible opportunity to be given to come to this platform. Like one-on-one, Zoom calls are usually like 4 people, like the whole panel. Yeah. Right. We just give you 3 questions, but when you get an entire time to be asked questions and, for you to say out what you think, by an incredible person who has achieved a lot in your own life. Maybe I should also apply, you should give me the name of your, what's this called? Like your assistant who handles your scheduling. And then I can figure out whether I can place myself in your calendar and also do an interview. You need to reverse this process. But it's been an incredible honor, and thank you so much. I'm so grateful for this.
Thank you so much, Brian. This has been wonderful. Maybe just to close off, maybe just mention some of the projects you're working on and where people can find you. And then,
okay, I'm working. I'm working on YouTube. That's something that I've been doing for a long time. People can find me on my YouTube channel, which is called Maro of Africa. But that's like youtube.com/C/Maro of Africa. Apparently, I have a custom handle, which is weird. But then I only hate that they had to put the C. They couldn't just put youtube.com/Maro of Africa. They said, no, that's not available. We can give you /C/Maro of Africa. So they can find me there. People, of course, can also find me. That is, if they want to connect with me professionally on my LinkedIn. I'm not sure whether it's called Brian Tafadzwa Marombedza or Tafadzwa Brian. I exchange those names depending on who I'm talking to and whether I think it's hard for them to say Tafadzwa or something like that. That is if they want to ask something about my professional lives. And then if they are trying to figure out what I do in terms of social media, I'm probably more active on Twitter. My handle is Maro of Africa. And then, I still have a Facebook account because it seems like it's hard. Like Facebook is that kind of friend who you really can't shut out of your life because you never know. Maybe one day they'll become important again. So I still have Facebook. And I used to have a website, but it's very dormant and I'll create one soon. But right around then, people can find me. Most people usually ask me for my WhatsApp, but it's weird because my WhatsApp changes because of where I am. It's weird. I have these things like on YouTube, I put in my email, I put in my Facebook, my Twitter to say, if you have questions, just contact me. And someone says, do you also have WhatsApp? I'm like, that seems kind of private. But it's if someone wants a call, I usually do like call-ins with people online over Zoom or something like that. But it's something that they can just reach out to my email inbox, maroofafrica@gmail.com, and all the other social media handles that I have, and we can have a chat.
How about Instagram? Because people will be looking forward to that drone photography.
Oh no, the drone photography actually doesn't have a channel as of yet. As I said, I'm not doing it legally. Well, no, scratch that. I'm not doing it at all. Like if I say I'm not doing it legally, it'll go to the chief of defense that I'm actually illegally flying my drone, which is a big crime, as I have been told. So no, I've actually pegged my drone. I thought it was right behind me, but it's somewhere in the other room. I've actually pegged my drone. I'm not using it, but I do have a dormant Instagram, which I last posted. Let me just check here, but it was a long time ago. I last posted this picture of mine in the south side of Berkeley. It was on April 26, 2020, and I had a really nice new haircut that I was experimenting with. It turns out people really loved it and the internet went crazy, but I'll try it again in the future. But that was the last post that I made, and it was that was it with Instagram. I'm no longer posting now, so they can go and try find Brian T Maro or something, but that's just viewing what my past Instagram has been. I'm not active there.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brian. Leave a comment on your thoughts on this video. I absolutely love reading your comments. If you liked this video, you're probably gonna like the other ones. So click the subscribe button so that you join the family and subscribe to my channel. Have you subscribed?